Renel Brooks-Moon is as synonymous with the San Francisco Giants as anyone outside of maybe Mike Krukow and Duane Kuiper. And today we learned that due to an inability to reach a contract agreement, Renel is not going to return as the voice of the San Francisco Giants at Oracle Park.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015. I've been hosting this show, I think tomorrow it'll be 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button, thumbs up button, wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started is with this kind of bombshell news that to me took the form of a totally so I get these emails from the Giants media department or whatever, and the title of this email was, and also it's the title of the press release, which is ahead of the 2024 season, Giants name, Renel Brooks-Moon, public address announcer Emeritus. And I saw the title and I saw the subject of the email and I was just like, okay, cool. You know, they're giving her like some well-deserved recognition for her long time service to the San Francisco Giants and what she means to the organization. So I didn't even open it. And then I open up Twitter and the world is melting down in Giants Twitter because this is like a very misleading subject of an email and of a press release. Because what this really means, if you start to read the press release, is we'll just read it right here. Quote, although they discussed an extension of Brooks-Moon's contract, which ended in December 2023. After extensive discussions, the Giants and Renel Brooks-Moon, mutually and amicably agreed to part ways. And so you might say, okay, mutually and amicably, but before you say that, I would say, well, after extensive discussions and that they discussed an extension of her contract, which ended in December. So we're talking about several months of time in which they had discussions, presumably. They, quote, mutually and amicably agreed to part ways. But Ann Killion, who sometimes is a little over the top, I think, in the San Francisco Chronicle, with some of the opinions I don't agree with, but in this one I happen to agree with a lot of what she said in her piece about this. She wrote that, quote, friends of Brooks-Moon, the highest profile African American in the Giants organization, say she is being forced out of the dream job she has held for 24 seasons, end quote. And then Alex Pavlovic of NBC Sports Bay Area says the press release said the sides, quote, mutually and amicably agreed to part ways. And then he says, although that does not seem fully accurate, Brooks-Moon had hoped to continue as public address announcer per team sources, but her contract ended in December. And more about this, Pavlovic said the Giants did not immediately announce a replacement for Brooks-Moon. They are set to introduce changes to Oracle Park on Thursday. So maybe we get an update there on Thursday. But basically, my analysis here, the takeaway here is that this is absurd. This is absurd, and this is what everybody has said. So I am not unique in saying this, but she is, like I said in the open there, as synonymous with the Giants as anyone outside of probably Mike Krukow and Duane Kuiper. Throw in John Miller, throw in Dave Fleming, but I think, there's a case to be made. She is above those two, and that it's Kruk and Kuip and Renel Brooks-Moon. And for me personally, I was 10 years old when when Oracle Park opened. And so she, like I said, I'm a lifelong fan. So she has been the voice of the Giants, anyone who's my age or younger, for basically our whole lives. And you go to a game, no matter what the game was, and if you were lucky enough to go to playoff games or games where Barry Bonds was hitting record-breaking home runs or Matt Cain's perfect game or whatever, and like the Tim Lincecum, like I just remember how electric it was when she would like introduce Tim Lincecum as the starting pitcher for a game, and on and on and on. I just can't believe that they're letting her go over an inability to essentially pay her enough, is what it seems like. I don't know. I would like to see Renel come out with some kind of statement. I don't know if she will. It's obviously up to her. People like Pavlovic and Killion saying like friends of Brooks-Moon say she is being forced out, and Pavlovic saying that she wanted to return. It tells me it's about money. And there are just certain things that you have to draw the line somewhere. She can't be asking for $1 billion a year, but like there's just certain things that aren't worth pinching pennies over. And so this reflects poorly on the Giants organization. It reflects poorly on ownership. This is, for those Farhan haters out there or whatever, this has nothing to do with that set of individual, like the front office that makes baseball operations, which is what Zaidi is in charge of, is baseball operations. This is business operations. This is, all the way up to the top with Greg and Charles Johnson and Larry Baer and people like that. Like, I frankly can't believe it. And it's kind of like, whoever comes in next is kind of going to be the Gabe Kapler of PA announcers, in that you're replacing a legend and you're just not going to be able to measure up. And so it's very sad to me, because like I remember games when she's had to miss some games over the last few years. Anytime, like even on television, it just doesn't sound right when there's somebody else announcing the names. You can hear it through the TV and I'm like, what the heck? That, she's just synonymous with the Giants. And the fact that they couldn't get something done over money, it seems, is just kind of crazy. And I hope for all of our sakes that this never happens with, Kruk and Kuip or John and Dave, like the announcers that we have for games on TV and on the radio. As brutal as this is, let's just hope this doesn't continue. And I don't have full confidence that it won't, because I bet, Kruk and Kuip probably demand a significant amount of money given their iconic status, and that may be what was happening with Renel here too. So, sad day for the Giants, but, we'll continue to talk about this if anything else comes out, if Renel speaks or anything like that. So be on the lookout for that. But coming up in just a minute, we're going to turn our attention to more about Blake Snell, the Giants being called the favorites here by a reporter. He is still unsigned. We are like just over a week from opening day. So we'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by our good friends over at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And so I'm currently just checking out some of the odds here. And if it were me, if I was a new customer, you can place that $5 or more bet on a heavy favorite. Like, I don't know, I'm looking through and there were some just ridiculously heavy favorite. Oh my gosh, Stetson at Connecticut, Connecticut minus 20,000 is the money line there. Place a $5 or more bet. If that bet wins, then you get 200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com/lockedon. So, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. All right, as promised, we are going to get into some Blake Snell news after we turn the page. I mean, we're not going to be able to turn the page here. This is going to be weird as heck. Somebody other than Renel and mutually and amicably. If it wasn't actually mutual, then it stings big time. It'd be one thing if she was retiring. That would just be sad, but we would accept it. But, being pushed out or just not being able to agree to a contract is just crazy. It's like not being able to, just imagine them announcing that they couldn't agree to a contract with Kruk and Kuiper. It's like you just pay what it takes to bring certain people back. And this doesn't apply to players a lot of the time because the players, the performance declines and you just have to make the tough choice at a certain point. But there's no decline in Renel, like she's still killing it at that job. And I don't know. It's a bad look, and it's also going to diminish the experience at the park and on TV, I swear, or on the radio. I really did even notice it on TV. So anyway, I want you to know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You already knew this because I've been telling you, Locked On Sports today. But baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 4 p.m. Pacific time for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports today. On March 20th at 4 Pacific, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 4 Pacific on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. And of course, I will be making an appearance on that show coming up in just 2 days' time at 4 p.m. Pacific. So, moving on, let's talk Blake Snell. So, he remains unsigned. There was news at the end of last week coming into the weekend that he threw in front of scouts and he threw in the Seattle area 4 innings of work against like a JUCO team or something like that, and that he looked good. And then the reports were that the Astros were like the favorites all of a sudden, and that they were making a serious pursuit of Snell. But Bob Nightingale, so we're going to cite 2 reporters who don't have the best of reputations, particularly Nightingale. I don't know. He's just not like, it's not Ken Rosenthal or Jeff Passan saying this stuff. It's Bob Nightingale who, I don't know, take it with a grain of salt. But he says, the Houston Astros, who exchanged contract proposals this week, and this was from a couple days ago, so he means last week, for 2-time Cy Young winner Blake Snell, now appear to be long shots to sign him. They have balked at Snell's asking price of at least a 2-year guarantee for $60 million, including an opt-out after the 2024 season. Astros' biggest concern is that they will be over another luxury tax threshold if they pay Snell close to $30 million annually. They have a projected blah, 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 blah. Nobody cares about the Astros on the show. If they have problems if they sign Snell to a contract exceeding $20 million a year. So yeah, good luck not exceeding $20 million a year for Snell unless you go really long term. So Nightingale then says the San Francisco Giants are now looming as the favorites for Snell, who have been engaged, but were also waiting for the price tag to drop. So I would say 2 years, $60 million is the price tag has dropped, because this was a guy, I think MLB Trade Rumors predicted like $200 million for Blake Snell, obviously over a much longer term. But, the Giants have avoided and wanted to avoid these short-term deals with opt-outs this offseason. They kind of, I don't want to say broke their own rule, but the deal was too good to pass up with Matt Chapman. And also at a certain point, if that's what the player wants, then that's the only way to get the player. If you're the Giants and you're willing to go long-term on a guy, but it's just not on the terms that player wants, then they prefer the shorter-term deal with the higher AAV and the chance to re-enter the market next year when maybe there are better market conditions. Like the Mets didn't really spend much this offseason, and the Padres didn't really spend much this offseason. There were a lot of teams talking about, television deals were an issue this offseason. And so I understand the desire to maybe re-enter the market next year. But I don't know, 2 years, $60 million with an opt-out for Snell makes a lot of sense for the Giants. I mean, something around there, you can't get something done, or maybe they can, They are being called the favorites here. I would assume that that's just an assumption by Nightingale based on this. But you take a team like the Astros out of the equation, like who's left? Which, it did seem for a minute there like, okay, the Astros are going to swoop in and get something done here. But the Giants just remain as likely as anyone, but we just don't know. Like it could be they're just totally out and they refuse to spend another dime, like, maybe was the case with Renel Brooks-Moon. But also they could just be lurking there waiting for the right price and jumping on it. But I mean, how much lower than 2 years, $60 million with an opt-out can you really expect the reigning Cy Young Award winner, who's only 31, to get and to accept? So that would push the Giants past the first luxury tax threshold. The J.D. Davis situation changed the numbers a little bit, so it's a little different than the last time I discussed this. But looking at their luxury tax payroll, it's approximately $226 million, and the first threshold is $337 million. So if they spent $11 million per year, like it's an average annual value thing, then they would be over that first threshold. And so there's just no getting around it unless they were to somehow trade, like all of Michael Conforto's $18 million salary or something. They would be exceeding the luxury tax threshold, the first one. But what Nightingale was talking about was that the Astros would be exceeding, I believe, the second threshold, not just the first. And there are sharper penalties with each tier. I think the bigger penalty is not about the ramifications of exceeding the luxury tax threshold. It's more about that you would be forfeiting not only your second highest draft pick in the upcoming draft, like they are for signing Matt Chapman because he rejected the qualifying offer, but if you sign another guy who rejected the qualifying offer, like Snell did, then you would also forfeit your third highest pick in the upcoming draft. So they would lose their second and third highest picks in the upcoming draft if they were to sign these two players. They already signed one. Jordan Montgomery, by the way, is also still out there, and he does not have this qualifying offer kind of string attached, and so that's worth pointing out. But anyway, we also had a tweet from John Heyman from last night at 7:40 p.m., March 17th, who said, quote, "Giants are among teams showing interest in reigning NL Cy Young winner Blake Snell. Uncertain where SF stands." Okay, but manager Bob Melvin, who had him in San Diego, said this today: I quote, "I want Blake Snell to go somewhere he's happy. He's a terrific kid and a good pitcher," end quote. So I don't know, that to me, like, Bob Melvin's quote almost speaks more, almost like has more to it than the, Heyman's tweet, "uncertain where SF stands." It's like, okay, well, what are you even saying then? But I don't know. Bob Melvin's, "I want him to go somewhere he's happy," kind of like sounds of he's not coming here. That's kind of how I read it, but I wasn't there when he said this, so I don't really know. But it could very well be that they're done. It could very well be that they end up signing Blake Snell. I mean, at this point, you are talking about a massive discount versus what the market originally looked like, or what people predicted it would look like for Snell, what the asking price originally looked like. So there you have it. That's the latest. There's kind of like, it looked like the Astros, but now Bob Nightingale, calling them a long shot is significant. And so who's going to sign him? We don't know. But Giants remain in the mix until proven otherwise. Anyway, coming up next, we're going to talk about Alex Cobb being remarkably ahead of schedule, how this ties in with a potential Blake Snell signing. And also, if we have time, JD Davis to the Oakland A's. So all of that coming up in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you in part by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, which I personally have bought from eBay Motors, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, here we go. We're going to get into Alex Cobb being way ahead of schedule. We've talked about this before, but his timeline just continues to move up. And then if we have time for it, we might save this for tomorrow. JD Davis to the Oakland A's. So just kind of to put a bow on that whole situation and just kind of the financial aspect of it and what he ended up losing by having his non-guaranteed contract cut loose by the Giants. And I have a lot to say about this. That's why we might save it, or at least some of it, for tomorrow. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow. Hey, maybe more about JD Davis, maybe more about Blake Snell, maybe more about Renel. I assume some more is going to come out about this today. And so if anything does, we will have it for you. And we're going to be doing a crossover at some point in the earlier part of this week with Millard Thomas from Locked On D-backs. So I can't wait for that. But the big news here in the Giants, like in terms of their actual team, which unfortunately for themselves, they are distracting from their actual team with moves like, I mean, I don't know, just the way some of the communication stuff, like Brandon Crawford leaving, to me, it was the right thing. Nobody expected him to be back, but it's the lack of communication. It's the stuff that Crawford said, which was that he felt like it was personal. And then the JD Davis stuff, I think that's kind of a non-story. His contract was not guaranteed. It's part of the rules of the collective bargaining agreement, and it's kind of his agent's fault, in my opinion, that they didn't accept a little bit of a lower offer. So, and then Renel, excuse me, I got some cayenne pepper in my lungs this morning. Highly do not recommend. excuse me, highly do not recommend getting cayenne pepper in your lungs. It burns quite a bit, and apparently hours later it still bothers you. But anyway, Alex Cobb, he pitched in a live game. So he was facing minor leaguers, and yeah, a minor league game. It was a minor league game facing high A players. He threw 27 pitches, 18 strikes, and he struck out 5 in 2 hitless innings. And then Alex Pavlovic says at this rate, the guy might be ready for the opening day roster. So I don't know, there's maybe a little bit of facetiousness there, but at the same time, we're not talking all-star break at this point unless he has a setback. We're talking about a guy who appears like he should be ready by, late April, early May, kind of at the latest, is what it would seem like to me based on the timeline. Because he literally may get into a Cactus League game. He may pitch for the Giants in Major League camp before this thing is all said and done. And it's getting close to being said and done. I mean, we're talking next week is opening day. Next Monday, I think the A's, the little A's not Bay Bridge, it's the preseason A's series, I think is Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday off, and then Thursday opening day, Sunday in Sacramento to play the River Cats, Giants AAA team. But so there's less than a week of Cactus League games remaining, and yet I have heard that he may pitch in a Cactus League game. I guess that would maybe be his next start. And so, yeah, so Shayna Rubin of the San Francisco Chronicle, basically, he faced, he struck out 5 in 2 innings plus an extra out, so I guess it was 2 1/3, and that Alex Cobb said afterwards, I think a lot of the pitches that he had made probably wouldn't have gotten those results in a big league game, but just getting out there and getting my work in felt great. And so he's just tremendously ahead of schedule is essentially the point. When we entered camp, we were talking about Alex Cobb being mid-season-ish, right, for his return from a significant hip surgery in which they put in 6 anchors or something. I don't even know what any of this means in his hip. He's had the same procedure on his other hip, but this was what was bothering him last season, and he had this surgery. It was a major surgery, and the report, I never got clarification, was that he basically wouldn't pitch. He would resume pitching in 6 months, but it wasn't clear if that meant he will start throwing a ball in 6 months or he'll be back in the major leagues in 6 months. But it seems that actually what they meant was 6 months until he starts doing what he's doing now, pitching in games, even at low levels. And so obviously this is basically, he's several weeks behind, 2 to 3 weeks behind if he's at this stage now. But to me, that would set him up for an April return. And so it's just great news, but also it does factor in to the possibility, you can, maybe make it easier on yourself to justify not signing a Blake Snell or a Jordan Montgomery. I'm not saying that's what I would recommend. I'm just saying, if you talk about, okay, imagine Alex Cobb is healthy, and suddenly you've got Logan Webb, Alex Cobb, Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, and then kind of a fifth starter battle with Keaton Wynn and Mason Black and others in that mix, and then Robbie Ray coming back eventually, then you could kind of talk yourself into not needing to make another acquisition. But I'm of the mind that, you want to be careful with some of these young guys, and that, other guys get hurt and guys have setbacks and whatever. And that if you can bring in the reigning Cy Young Award winner on a seemingly very discounted contract, you should do it. So, there are consequences, of course. Like I said, that third highest pick and then also international bonus pool money being taken away from you as well as a consequence of signing another guy who rejected the qualifying offer. So, like I said, we did not get into J.D. Davis to the A's. We will discuss some of that tomorrow, unless our crossover with Millard Thomas from Locked On D-backs is tomorrow. Millard had some spicy takes about the Giants in our season preview, and I want to confront him about some of those spicy takes that you will hear on that March 20th show that I was just talking about earlier. So anyway, Locked On, as you know, has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Again, really bummed about this news about Renel, but we'll hopefully have more coming out today, and we'll get into it tomorrow. So until then, thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.